I'm already live. All right.
Stuff, and it's
Okay. I'm live already. That was quick. Probably because everybody and their brother does a live stream when I do it on Sunday at 7. Welcome to a very early live stream for me at noon on Sunday. And those of you who are tuning in late, watching this later, why is this happening? Oh my God, you were supposed to go at 7. You normally go at 7. I had to do this early because I am doing an event tonight from 6 to 9 in Matawan, New Jersey. The I Heart Horror Trunk or Treat event. So very Halloweeny. It's not quite noon, so let me just give you a quick rundown of the week. It was a bit of a bumpy ride. I did a senior place, Village of the Meadowbrook, on Monday. Then I did the South County Library on Wednesday. The Manchester Library we had to reschedule that. Then on Friday, I did the night market at Dragon Shops. That went very well. And yesterday, I did the Scary Book Fest in Flemington, New Jersey. Beautiful weather. Beautiful weather. So tonight is I Heart Horror, Trunk or Treat, 6 to 9. And then tomorrow, I'm doing the Women's Club at Barnegat. And then I get a day off to recoup. And before I do a run of, how many events am I doing in a row? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I'm doing about 15 in a row. I say about because I'm not sure. Like so far I've had 2. I had to reschedule at Manchester, and then I had another reschedule. I forget which one that was. So, and another. I had another one I got to reschedule too, but that was on a day where I already had something, and I'm getting offers to do stuff, and I can't even. There's just no way. I have to reply to somebody today. So Halloween is my time of year where I do lots of stuff. I should probably reorder some books. We'll see what my book situation is after tonight. So yeah, welcome to the live stream where we do it live. I don't know if anybody's here. Probably not. I may have to take a bathroom break in the middle of this. Had a big lunch, and I normally don't do that, and it's a little bit. It's giving me a little bit of the feeling, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I'm doing this early because of this event, and it's a shocking turn of events in Hollywoke. Let me tell you, it's a movie we talked about last week, but we got to talk about it again because the numbers don't lie. Look at these numbers. Okay, so first off, number 1 movie in the country is The Terrifier 3, 18.3 million. So, the new king of horror is here, and he is the Terrifier. Now, I haven't seen any of the Terrifier movies. I don't like a lot of gore, so I kind of think I won't like it because it's a little over the top. But people love evil clowns. What can you say? Number two is The Wild Robot, which premiered 3 weeks ago. It's at 13.4. Now, here's the shocker. The Joker, Folie à Deux, Joker 2, is third in its second week. After posting 40 million last week, or 44 or whatever, it dropped 81% and is at 7.055 million. And I say that because it is only $5,000 above Beetlejuice, which is in its 6th week. And quite frankly, Joker 2 is in more theaters than any of these movies. And should have done 20. Should have been number 1 again. But it is not. And that's pretty close to my prediction. My prediction was about 75% drop. I knew it would be more than 50. A lot of people said 60, 65. No, it is. The word of mouth on this movie is absolutely crushing. Toxic as F. As toxic as they think the audience was for the first movie. And it's deserved. It's really deserved, I think. Um, I think from everything that I'm hearing and seeing in terms of the clips, Joker Filet do betrays the original movie and betrays its audience. Let's see. What was. Yeah, it's a big drop in the international, too. Big drop. What was last week? Last week we were at. I want to say. No, maybe not. Maybe it's at 50 million. I forget what was last week. But the exact numbers of the international box office. I wish the numbers would track that as well. I wish it would just put total side by sides and percentages of the international box office too. But yeah, that's a devastating blow. This movie isn't probably not going to make its budget back, which was about 200 million, 190 I heard, 200. But I think the number one reason is it betrays its audience. It betrays its fans. You had a character that, in the first movie, essentially tears the city apart because, and he's sympathetic. He's portrayed as a sympathetic character in the first movie. Arthur is, because he's sort of forced into it. He doesn't want to do all these horrible things. He wants a normal life, but the entire world, the entire city just seems to be against him. The second movie looks like a total rehash of the first movie, number one, with Lady Gaga inserted in to sing a bunch of songs that I don't think anybody cares about. And, I mean, they're just brutalizing it online. I mean, I think that part of it's over already. The fans sort of made up their mind very quickly, like, no, this doesn't work. When I initially heard it was a musical, my reaction was, how are they going to do that? Because it's supposed to take place like in the 70s. So my hope was, okay, it's a musical, but what he's going to do, he's going to take a bunch of great 70s songs and somehow weave that into the story, right? So, I don't know, you pick a great 70s song like You're So Vain by Carly Simon. You could see that in a movie, right? In a Joker movie about the Joker, possibly about Harley or another character. Like, that's a great song. And you could see maybe Harley, Lady Gaga, singing that to Joaquin Phoenix, who is just so utterly obsessed with his own, say, persona of the Joker. That would have been an example, right? And it could have been about what the Harley character really was about, how the Joker manipulates her and basically turns her into a mental mess, just as crazy as he is, in order to get out of Arkham. That should have been the movie. I would have written the movie like this. First act, the Joker's been in Arkham Asylum, or, Arthur Fleck, whatever you want to call him. He's all but forgotten. It's a few years later, maybe 5 years, like the movie. And he gets a new psychiatrist named Harley Quinn. And at first, and Harley's very lonely. She's going through the same sort of stuff Arthur did. The city's very much against her. It's harsh. She's got no family, no friends. And she's not crazy like Arthur is, at least initially, but she's kind of on the bubble there. She's really has nothing to look forward to in her life. But then she gets Arthur as a patient for whatever reason. Let's say Arthur subtly manipulates another inmate to kill his psychiatrist because he doesn't like him. Like, that would be a Joker move, right? Like, he doesn't do it, but he gets another crazy patient, and then he laughs while it's happening. And they couldn't do anything about it, and kind of nobody cares. You know, they care about the doctor that's dead, and the other patient's dead, too. So now they give Arthur to Harley because nobody wants to deal with Arthur now. Because after what happened, they kind of know, but they kind of can't pin it on him. So they give Arthur up to Harley. And Harley initially is intrigued by Arthur and wants to help him. And at first, it seems like she's kind of helping him. But really, it's all a ruse to pull Harley in to his world. And he really likes her too, seemingly. And he's super nice to her. And he realizes that he can manipulate her. So he does. And during the course of the second act, you see their relationship grow. And then you could have some songs, right? You have some songs about relationships or love or whatever. And you could see that at first, Harley's helping him and thinks he's getting better, but he's really, you know, it's really all a ruse. And she's going the extra mile to give him extra, say, privileges in order to encourage his behavior. And maybe part of the plot could be that Arthur is going to confess to his crimes and make amends, and that's part of the treatment. But only if he gets, you know, a little bit of this reward system that she sees herself as inventing as a doctor. Because keep in mind, Harley Quinn was supposedly a psychiatrist. As the movie progresses, that seems to be not the case. Her bosses don't like what she's doing. They don't like that she has progress seemingly with Arthur, because that's going to make them look very bad. They expected her not to have any progress, and here she is having progress seemingly. And they start to do things to sabotage her, to make her life miserable, and eventually to stop seeing Arthur. And this Arthur at one point has seemingly a break, but really he's just play acting in order to play on her sympathies. And at some point she breaks and decides, that's it, I'm going to free Arthur. So she makes the arrangements. Maybe she kills a guard that has been harassing her the entire movie, something like that, somebody who kind of deserves it. And she frees him, and they escape together. But clearly Arthur was faking the entire time. The Joker really just tolerates her, and she is second banana. But she tolerates it because that's all she has now. She's sort of crossed the Rubicon and become like him in a lot of ways. But she is utterly subservient to him because there's no other world outside of this now. And then they both sort of go off together, and then the implication is the city's so dysfunctional they can't capture them. And they run amok and do all sorts of petty crimes, is the implication into the future. And that could have been an amazing ending, number one. Number two, it could have been a great tee-up for a third movie where they actually meet Batman. Now, I would have liked to have seen a Batman like Robert Pattinson meet up with Joaquin Phoenix Joker and Lady Gaga Harley as two forces of nature, right? Joker and Harley representing the forces of chaos, and Batman the forces of law and order. It would have been great, because you could have had lines in the movie like, you know, the Joker saying, "I knew your father," right? Something like that, because he did. You know, if he finds out he's Bruce Wayne. you could have had Joaquin Phoenix and Robert Pattinson in a movie together, which I think would have been pretty badass. But it would have required Lady Gaga to be extremely subservient as the character is in the comics and in the original incarnation. Harley is just second banana to the Joker. Indie fandom is here. Instead, we are getting the ending of Hollywoke. Yes, we certainly apparently did. I know the ending. I won't say it in case you haven't seen it yet. If you want to, I don't know why you would at this point, but the ending is a shame for one actor in particular who's relatively unknown, because they could have spun him into something. But part of this is driven by the talent and their management. When you get to a certain level like Joaquin Phoenix, you know, he's sort of the actor's actor these days. He's sort of where Robert De Niro was 30 years ago. Indie Phantom. Am I in the future? No, you're not, Indie Phantom. You are in the early day live stream because I have a nighttime event. So he kind of doesn't want to do the Joker. I mean, like the first movie, sure, Oscar winning, kind of tough to beat, kind of tough to top that. Probably shouldn't have done a second movie at all. But if you were gonna do one, you know, it should have. This thing dropped 82%. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And keep in mind, it's in 4,102 theaters. Terrifier 3 is only in 2,514 theaters. And it got beat badly. So you could add maybe another, let's say, another quarter to that, like another 6 million. It's really a Terrifier 3 should, if it was in as many theaters, might be at like 24 million. Or if you go the other way, really, Joker Folie à Deux should have made, if it was in the same amount of theaters as Terrifier, that would have been about, I'd say about 4 million. It would be fourth. It should be below Beetlejuice. You know, when they, by Sunday, after Sunday, they calculate the actual, a lot of these numbers are estimate, especially for Sunday. So it might be fourth. It might be below Beetlejuice, which has been out 6 weeks, which is crazy and shows you how bad the people are reacting to this movie. The buzz is just absolutely deadly. Absolutely deadly. Because I think he betrayed his audience. Creatively, I would say. You know, he hasn't come out with a statement like, oh, everybody who doesn't watch my movie is a bigot or anything like that. But feels like he betrayed the audience and sold them down. Indie Phantom, I heard it's fourth. I wouldn't be surprised. It probably is. I would absolutely not be surprised if it's actually fourth. Beetlejuice did beat it, you say? It's very possible. They're only separated by $5,000, so, you know, for Beetlejuice, that's 2 movie theaters. That's not a lot in terms of a movie, but it's a disgrace. I mean, this is a $200 million movie, Joker 2, basically. It's not going to make its budget back, it doesn't look. And forget about the marketing. It's not even going to come close to that. So, what do you know, this is, if they came to Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix and said, listen, we're just going to throw money at you until you said yes to make a sequel to this thing. And their response is to, okay, yeah, let's make a sequel, but let's end this mess. And let's try to, say to our audience from the first movie, we don't like you. We don't really like the way you embraced our first movie. We don't think you got it. So we're gonna lecture you, kind of, which that's sort of what the sequel feels like. It feels like, okay, okay, fanboys, we're gonna tell you why you're so terrible and what a real character should be, you know, or whatever. Then again, maybe just Todd Phillips can't make a sequel to save his life, or he makes movies that really should never have sequels. I mean, The Hangover is another movie probably shouldn't have had a sequel, or if you were going to do it, you really had to up the ante. And they failed to do that on a number of levels in Hangover 2. They just basically remade The Hangover 1. Now, to some extent, you could do that, and it's funny because comedy is about repetition. Comedy is about repetition. Comedy is about repetition. Anyhow, you could do it. You could just do it again, and it's kind of funny that you're doing it again. But you have to up the ante. And the problem with Hangover, and I stated this in another long video, Zach Galifianakis, I think, was at the heart of the first one, and he, in my view, ruins his own character in the sequels. Just ruins them, especially in 2. Because the best part about 1 is Zach Galifianakis loves Bradley Cooper and wants to be his bro, and sort of just like follows him around and wants to be like him. And that totally is what should have happened in the second movie. Like, the second movie should have been like he practically becomes Bradley Cooper, which would have been hilarious. And then maybe Bradley Cooper, for whatever reason, falls on hard times and sort of ends up like Zach Galifianakis, which would have been an amazing switch. And they had a falling out, and that's why. And this time Zach helps him, and he becomes Bradley Cooper again. But yeah, part of the problem is, and I was talking about this with my film buddy, cinematographer buddy, who he just watched Oppenheimer, and we were talking about that movie. Again, I haven't seen that, but everything I heard was it's too long. And what he basically said is there's Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and it's great. And then Act 4 happens. And Robert Downey Jr. is all over it, and he's not sure why they even did a fourth act, which is interesting. I kind of want to see it. I still want to see it. At some point, I'll see it. And, you know, when I have like 2 days to myself to see a movie that long. But we were talking about how Indy Phantom. Yeah, that guy, Galifianakis, dropper off the edge of the planet. Yeah, I don't like Galifianakis in terms of his comedy because it's so meta. And meta comedy, you know, for short burst maybe, but for long-term sort of comedy, it's god awful. It gets old really fast. I mean, really fast. Okay, you're making everybody uncomfortable just to do it. Okay, you're being purposely terrible and we all know it. It's funny for a couple of times, but yeah, like for Zach Galifianakis in the second movie, oh man, you're going to get me talking about the Hangover thing. There's a scene, the biggest scene in that one, or maybe it was in the third one, I forget, but I think it was in the second one. He buys, his family's rich, and he buys a giraffe as a pet. And then he tries to drive it home, but he hits a low bridge and decapitates the giraffe. And it's supposed to be, like, funny, but just comes off as mean and stupid. Because Zach Galifianakis' character from the first movie, if he had done something like that, would have been crushed. In this movie, it's just sort of glossed over. Indy Phantom. Oppenheimer is forgettable to me now, like most recent movies. Yeah, and but we were talking about how, you know, why did they have this fourth act with Robert Downey Jr.? And we came to the conclusion, or he came to the conclusion, that basically it was probably a combination of, you know, Robert Downey Jr. wanting to do big scenes and his management saying, you got to put him in the movie. the studio saying, we paid all this money for Robert Downey Jr. Where is he? Because he's not in a lot of the beginning of the movie. And so the kind of thing, it's like everybody gets a scene sort of thing because he's got so many egos to deal with. And it may have been pressures from the studio, you know, or it may have been him following the book a little too close, or the actual events, depending. So it's difficult to parse. Ultimately, there are too many forces in Hollywood, and the old model was, in the 70s anyway, you had these auteurs who were great filmmakers, and you would give them budgets and they would do very well. They made a lot of great films in the 70s. But then there was more money, and I think they got corrupted by it to some extent, and they started making more and more luxurious movies. And it was like, on the one hand, you don't want the studio suits to dictate everything. But on the other hand, you don't want an auteur, even a good one, to do whatever the hell he wants, because he'll luxuriate in his own ego in a lot of ways, right? He'll come out with I mean, look at Megalopolis. Everything I'm seeing about Megalopolis sounds like an utter disaster now. I wanted to really like this movie. I still kind of want to see it, but I hear it's just about unwatchable. It's bad, like really bad. And it may be just Francis Ford Coppola indulging his intellectualness on screen to the point at which no one stopped him. No one said, hey, you got to make this a movie. You know, nobody put on any guardrails, and because of that, he almost didn't know where to stop. And, you know, it's not like any of the actors are going to tell Francis Ford Coppola what to do at this stage. Al Pacino might be able to, you know, because he's super famous or whatever, but that's about it. It's a short list of actors or any creatives who could stand up to a guy like Francis. And I really like him, and I really wanted to like Megalopolis, but it sounds utterly awful. But there needed to be a guy at the studio to say, you got to make this a 2-hour movie that people can watch. Indie Phantom, Megalopolis was really bad. Yeah, sounds that way. And you need a guy to say, we can't spend this money. It has to be 2 hours or less. It has to be watchable. You know, same thing with Oppenheimer, right? There needed to be somebody to say, we don't need this fourth act with Robert Downey Jr. You could put that in the extended cut. Well, we could release an extended cut later if and the movie was a big hit, and that would have been something to go see. But we can't, for the audience, for the regular movie-going public, we have to have a 2-hour or less movie. Has to be. There's so many movies that have no business being over 2 hours. They're way over 2 hours. Just way over. You know, Killers of a Flower Moon, another example. It's wildly long. And it seems to serve nothing other than, I don't know. I think we have a bunch of movie executives now that equate that they don't know what they're doing. They shouldn't be making creative decisions. They never should be making creative decisions. But they should be standing there. The producer should be standing there saying, no, this is too much money. The movie's too long. It has to be a certain format or else we can't make it. We can't produce this. We can't market it. We can't market a 3-hour movie unless it's some sort of epic like Lord of the Rings. There are some exceptions, but they're rare. They should be super, super rare. But, you know, Killers of a Flower Moon was not that movie. Oppenheimer, probably not that movie. Megalopolis, I think wanted to be that movie, just wasn't. And then the third person that should have some power, and I've said this for years, and I'm obviously biased, but it should be the screenwriter. So it should be a sort of like 3 branches of government on a movie. The first guy is the producer. Now, the producer should not be in charge of any creative decisions whatsoever. His only concern is the money and the product at the end. That's his concern. Like, are we spending too much money? And is this product, is it testing well? Is it 2 hours? Can we put it in theaters? Indie Phantom, even Terrifier 3 is over 2 hours. The last one was 2.5 hours. That movie has no business being over 2 hours, in my view. None. It's just a bunch of wasted time. That is especially a movie. Now I know I would hate it. It's especially a movie that should be 90 minutes flat. All slasher movies should be 90 minutes. There's just no reason for it to be longer. Art the Clown is not that deep. The director should be in charge of the pacing of the movie, the look of the movie, the delivery, of the actors, all that good stuff. Alex Ogle is here. Just going to say hello before I have to go out for Canadian Thanksgiving lunch. Oh, wow. I have a pitch for a horror movie script, but we'll save it for next Sunday. Sydney Sweeney to star. Excellent. I can't wait. Get it on my desk. Can you tell me what Canadian Thanksgiving is before you leave? Because I've never heard of Canadian Thanksgiving lunch. Is Canada Thanksgiving different? It's crazy. So the screenwriter needs to be in charge of the story, right? He needs to say to the director, don't shoot this extra scene. It'll throw off the pacing. We don't need this. That's what he needs to be able to do. Even in like Deadpool versus Wolverine or Deadpool and Wolverine, they had an extra scene with Peter that they cut from the movie. And that's fine. That's about right. You might have one or two extra scenes that they kind of slowed down the movie, cut them. But this scrapbooking, which I've talked about, that Hollywood seems to want to do, where they shoot like 15 extra scenes and different endings. Indie Phantom, Thanksgiving is today here. Oh, okay. So it's just regular Thanksgiving, but you have it on October 13th. Weird. Or on a Sunday. Also weird. So do you pour maple syrup on your turkey? Is that how it works? Sounds delicious, if that's the case. I might try that myself. So the screenwriter needs to be in charge of the story. Alex Ogle, it's basically the Christian festival of the harvest, but Americanized. Oh, interesting. That's why it's on a Sunday then. I get it. Okay. Interesting. Godspeed. Godspeed on your Canadian Thanksgiving. So the screenwriter needs to be in charge of the story, needs to rein in the director creatively, and the producer needs to rein in the director financially. And the three together should then vote on certain things when they come to an impasse, right? So, for instance, if the director and the producer are arguing over whether or not a scene is going to be in a movie, and they absolutely come to an impasse, it should be the producer to be the arbiter and say, well, this movie's already pretty long, let's cut it, or we have room for that scene, let's leave it. If the director and the producer get into an argument, the director wants to shoot, I don't know, some elaborate thing, and the producer's like, this is a lot of money, the screenwriter could step in and say, well, we really need this scene, it's important to the film, or it's really not important to the story, you're right, we probably could cut it. If the director and, or rather the screenwriter and the producer were arguing, which really would never happen, but let's say they were, the screenwriter was like, well, we absolutely need these scenes. They're very elaborate, but they're necessary. And the producer's like, oh, they're too expensive. the director maybe could step in and say, either, well, we really need this scene to sell the story, it's going to be good for marketing or whatever. Or he could say, yeah, we don't really need these scenes. Let's write around that and do something else. So that could be the three branches of government. Sorry, I'm blowing up on the phone. In a movie. And I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it could help balance things out because things are so out of whack. Sometimes you have a director now, and it's a very short list these days of guys they just dump money on and let them do whatever they want, however long they want. But then you have studio executives micromanaging the damn thing from behind the scenes saying, well, we need this or we need that. Shouldn't be making creative decisions at all. That's not their job. Their job is to finance the movie and to pick good talent. But once you pick the talent, you have to let the talent do their job. And if you can't pick good talent, well, you're not a very good movie producer. You know, that's part of the job. You should be able to pick talent. You should be able to look at a movie he's done, say, this is a really good movie. You've gotten a lot out of this cast. And you did it on a low budget. And then give them a project that makes sense for them. You know, a lot of times, too, Hollywood, I can't believe some of the projects they gave to people just because of they were the right race or checked the right boxes in Hollywood. You look at the Eternals. You know, this woman went from doing essentially small independent movies, and then they drop a blockbuster-sized movie on her in her lap. It just was a bad idea from Jump Street. In the old days, they probably would have given her a bigger movie, certainly, to start ramping her up to a blockbuster, but they wouldn't have jumped right in to the biggest blockbuster. And the part of the problem, too, is you have two types of movies in Hollywood now. And you look at this list, you could see it. Terrifier 3 is basically low-budget slasher movie. Wild Robot, big budget. Joker, big budget. Beetlejuice, big budget. Piece by Piece, I believe that's a small budget. Transformers 1, big budget. Saturday Night Live is probably one of the only, or Saturday Night is probably one of the only movies that's kind of a normal budget. It probably didn't cost a tremendous amount of money, and yet it's kind of a big movie with Jason Reitman. It's sort of one of the few mid-level movies. My Hero Academia, that doesn't count. Nightmare Before Christmas is back in theaters. All right, well, let's get back to the list. Indie Phantom. Eternals will eternally go unseen to me. Yeah, who cares? There's so many movies now. I don't care if I ever see them. One of them may be Beetlejuice. From what I hear, it's just, Michael Keaton scenes are great, but that's about it. It made a lot of money, though. I would expect a third. Piece by Piece is number 5 at $3.8 million. So I don't know what this is. I don't think I've seen a trailer for it. 3.8 million is not bad, though. No, the numbers is not working yet again. So let's go to the IMDb. See if it's there. Yes, it is. Pharrell. Oh, okay. This is the Pharrell Williams movie done with Legos for some reason. So, yeah. I could see this movie making money the first week. Pharrell Williams is a big enough singer. He has a big enough following that his fans will go see it. And I have to say the Lego angle's kind of fun. A little different. But it'll drop like a rock next week, I would assume. Transformers 1 drops from 4 to 6. Again, it's basically an episode of the Transformers that they already did. Voiced by a lot of big name actors. I I now wish they stopped making Transformers movies. Let's see if it made its money. 75 million. It's at 111 million worldwide. It made its budget, but probably not making its marketing back. So maybe this will be the last one, but I kind of doubt it. They'll probably just start making it without big name people in it. In its third week, but really this is its first week, is Saturday night. Because now they've put it in thousands of theaters. In the last 2 weeks, I think it was only in a handful of theaters for some reason, just so they could get this jump. So it's at 3.4 million this week. It's done 4 million overall. So you can see the big jump in sales. And I don't imagine this cost a lot of money. I love the movie poster for it because it's done in the old style of movie posters from the 70s where they used to paint them. So it looks painted, and it's got all the characters, the entire old cast of Saturday Night Live and the various other factors and actors. And Lorne Michaels carrying them all. It's probably... I will probably see this movie on streaming. I kind of have mixed feelings about it because, as I said before, I'm a huge fan of Saturday Night Live, or was. I dedicated to half my life trying to build the skills so I could get on Saturday Night Live, but I never got even close. But now I just, it's kind of like everything else these days. It's sort of betrayed itself. Lorne Michaels, who still produces the show, it's in its 50th year. I think he's finally poised to step down. It's long past its prime. It's another example of you either live long enough to be, or you either die a hero or live long enough to be the villain. Like, if this show had died in like 1982, it would have gone down in history as one of the greatest shows ever. And it's sort of going down in history as one of the greatest shows ever, but it's really all about the early days. It was just, it's hard to describe how amazing the show was in the beginning. And now you look at it and you just go, people watch this show? Everything about it is just so dated and not what it was. There's almost nothing about it that's spontaneous other than it's still kind of live, although it's sort of delayed, and they've got all sorts of mechanisms in place so things won't go off the rails. Which is the exact opposite of the vibe when it started. They just had super talented people and would just do the show. And sometimes it would go wrong, but that was part of the beauty of it. So this is about the first Saturday Night Live ever, and they've got people portraying the old cast, and half of them are dead, and a lot of people don't know who the other half are. I don't even know why you would do this, but Hollywood loves the navel gaze, so I would be interested in doing this movie, but I'm 58 years old, and the guys they got working on this movie, the guys who were in this movie, they didn't see Saturday Night Live when this happened. They weren't alive. So I don't know. And like, Bill Murray should be in it in a cameo. So should Chevy Chase. They should all be in it. Like, all the living cast members should be, cab drivers and stuff during this movie. That 100%, that's the first thing I would have done. I would have lined up every old SNL guy to make an appearance in the movie. But I imagine that doesn't happen. And it looks like Jason Reitman's not a bad filmmaker. I don't envy his position in that creatively he's trying to separate himself from his father. And I think in that process he has to get away from certain things that would help the movie. And I just don't think a lot of people in Hollywood these days appreciate irreverent comedy at all, because it requires you to go for the jugular every effing time. You got to go for the jugular, the comedy jugular. And that's what Saturday Night Live did. They went for the jugular every damn time. And it was great. They did not give an F on the old Saturday Night Live. Absolutely not. Nobody thought it would last. And they were just knocking it out of the park every week. Those people, they couldn't even get an audition for this movie. They're not in Hollywood. They're just not. They're on the internet. Bottom line. The real talent's now on the internet. It doesn't go to Hollywood. It just doesn't get there. Once in a while, Hollywood will stumble upon a talent and throw a bunch of money at it, but it's rare. They're kind of finally warming up to talent on the internet, but once again, Hollywood refuses to learn anything, so they just pick people who have the highest like follower count on Instagram and hand them a movie or a TV show and expect it to do gangbusters, and it just won't. It just won't. You still have to look for talent, and Hollywood is like almost devoid of talent at this point. And it comes from that tightening grip. You know, I said once to an employer who was tightening their grip on the talent, I won't say who, I said, the more you tighten your hand, the more the sand slips through your fingers. And that's what was happening at his company. And he couldn't understand it. And I said, you got to back off and let things happen. You got to let talent. Yes, you once in a while you got to rein them in because they're out of control. Talent will go crazy sometimes, and some guys you even have to fire, but you have to give them a long leash and protect them whenever you can. You know, obviously if you got a guy with a drug problem or he's beating his girlfriend, you got to rein him in, fire him probably. But if you keep your talent, if you pick the right talent, that shouldn't even be an issue, you know. But a lot of guys just can't handle the fame. It's really funny to watch. I watched that happen in comics, and it was a very interesting process. And they were warned. My friend was warned, hey, a lot of people crack under the pressure, and this was comic books. And he kind of did a little bit. He kind of cracked under the pressure, and he wasn't a guy who you ever would have expected to crack under the pressure. But he started listening to things on the internet, and he got upset. Started to impact his work. He couldn't finish things, and yeah. So you need to find talent that's good, you know, but they're not meth addicts. Or if they are meth addicts, you're going to do a one and done and just cut them loose. You have to follow certain rules. Like movies should be 2 hours approximately, probably a little less. 90 minutes to 2 hours being the sweet spot. And you know, only under the most unusual circumstances do you ignore that. But they ignore that all the time now, so it's a big problem. My Hero Academia movie, You're Next, $3 million. So premieres very well for a anime movie. It's more and more common. The Nightmare Before Christmas back in theaters, 2.3 million. It's a good move by Disney. I'm not surprised at all. So yeah. I mean, you don't have any good movies. Might as well throw the old good movies up. In my view, The Apprentice, 1.58 million. This is the Donald Trump movie. Not doing so hot, premiering at 10. I don't think this movie's going to make its money back, but that's not its purpose at all, in my view. It's just to slam Trump. $16 million they spent on this thing. Yeah, you don't want to spend too much on propaganda. But $16 million, Sebastian Stan. I don't think Sebastian Stan will ever make it to the White House while Trump's in. So, I mean, he kind of looks like young Trump, I guess. But you know, even if this movie is legit, you can't trust it in this environment. You couldn't trust this movie to tell you anything. Hollywood barely follows history when they do something like this. You telling me now in this environment where they actively hate Donald Trump, this movie's going to even be close to reality? I just wouldn't believe it. No Trump supporter would. You know, this is a movie for people who already hate Donald Trump. And they can go in the movie and they can come out and go, yes, yes, I knew he was a terrible person, but I didn't know all the details. Now I know. Now I know I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. But you weren't voting for Donald Trump anyway. Yes, but now I know again. That's all it's for. So, and it's a good sign that it's not doing very well. Because there's not a lot of people who need to make up their minds, especially and use a movie for it. Or even want to see this. Number 11, dropping from 5, Speak No Evil. It's in its 5th week, 1.5 million. I'm more interested in seeing the original than the American version of this. Because I think it'll probably hit differently. But maybe on streaming. The Substance, again, I hear good things, dropping from 8 to 12, 1.1 million in its 4th week. I kind of want to see this movie. I don't think it's making its money, but I have a sneaking suspicion it'll end up in the Oscar mix for something. Maybe for Demi Moore. So it doesn't look bad, I'll say. Average Joe. This sounds like, I'm going to guess this is a religious movie. High school football coach Joe Kennedy had no other choice but to fight. A childhood in foster care followed by 20 years in the Marine Corps was nothing compared to his biggest battle. His commitment to stand for God publicly, there you go, by taking a knee in prayer after each game. When he was fired, Joe and his wife Denise knew his battle for religious freedom, freedom of speech, and the rights of all Americans was one they would have to fight no matter the cost. Okay, Fathom Events continuing to make money, 1.1 million. That's a lot for a movie like that, I think. Because it probably cost a couple of mil, not too much money. White Bird, A Wonder Story. I don't understand what this is. It's part of another movie. Some kind of franchise, dropping 52%. In its 2nd week, $755,000. Deadpool and Wolverine still hanging around, $751,000. In its 12th week. That's not bad for its 12th week. Still on almost 1,000 theaters. Look Back. It's a kids movie in its 2nd week, dropping 65%. Ooh, not too good. Megalopolis in its 3rd week, $230,000. What is the flop on this? Phew, $9 million. Holy crap. I didn't understand why Hollywood wouldn't give this a chance, but I became to understand that it's just a GD mess. And I really wanted to like it. I really wanted to see it. I still kind of want to see it, but man, it looks like a slog now. So this is a huge loss, huge flop. Bad way to end your career there, Francis. I think he's done. I think he's literally done his career. At best, he might make another, tiny movie if he's even capable of making a tiny movie after that. We Live in Time. I don't know what this is. Looks like a romance with Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. Who? So that looks like it's just peeking out. Seems like, it's only in 5 theaters, so they're just testing the waters. The Forge, still in theaters. Semi-religious movie. $210,000. Did really well for its budget. Never Let Go. That's that Halle Berry movie. Looks god-awful. 146,000. Am I Racist still in theaters? 115,000 in its fifth week, going out of theaters. Alien Romulus, $69,000, still lingering in its ninth week. A Different Man, in its fourth week, $46,000. It Ends With Us, $16,000. Again, they're already putting the next Colleen Hoover book in turnaround. Vindicating Trump did not do well in its third week, $15,500. Only did about $1 million overall. Again, it's basically propaganda for Trump. The Front Room, that's a Monique movie, $12,000 in its sixth week. Dolly, $7,000 in its 21st week. Don't know why it's still in theaters. And The Cruise. What the hell's The Cruise? I know that movie. Do I know that movie? It's an old movie? No movie poster. The Cruise. 1998? What the hell did they put this back in a movie theater for? Why is it even on the list? $70 million for the week. This is October. It should kick up. I mean, there should be more horror movies. And we'll see what the rest of Halloween leaves us. I can't think what's coming out. What the hell's coming out? Most anticipated movies. Avengers Doomsday. That's not coming out anytime soon. Man, not seeing anything. Not seeing anything big coming in. Coming soon. So, yeah, it's kind of a wreck. Kind of a wreck. And most of it's on Joker. It's from putting their too many eggs in one basket. I mean, that's basically a $200 million movie. They really should make, I'll say, if you wanted to make, you can make 4 big budget movies. 4 $50 million movies would have been amazing, right? Hell, you could have really gone 10 $20 million movies. They just don't need to. I mean, even the Joker movie didn't need to be that big. A lot of it was shot on a soundstage, it looks like to me. I mean, you had some big scenes take place in the 70s. It's a bit of a period piece, but you know, the first movie didn't cost that much. Why spend $200 million on the second movie? You know, even now at my events, I'll have people talk about movies, just sort of generally speaking, and in a generally speaking way, they will say things like, are they just laundering money in Hollywood? I mean, really, these are normies. These aren't people who are like movie heads saying this kind of stuff. These are like average moviegoers. They just can't believe the movies that are coming out, and they say stuff like they're laundering money. And I'm like, yeah, probably are. So, you know, some of these movies they say cost $200 million. I kind of think that's an exaggeration in order to write it off on their taxes for the money they do take in overall. Because keep in mind, you know, Inside Out made over $1 billion. Deadpool made over $1 billion. So that's $3 billion, basically between those two movies, about $3 billion. And they have to write off probably, I'll say, $2.5 billion, as that's their profit. They don't want to pay the taxes on that. So when you look at it that way, you know, a loss of $200 million, well, that's just a drop in the bucket. They need like 10 movies like that to offset the money they made, right? So, you know, maybe the strategy is now we make, say, 24 movies, and two of them are $1 billion hit, and then the other ones we just all write off the cost. Arden is here. Hey. Good for you, Arden. What are you doing? This is my time slot. I'm sorry, Arnott. I had to do a slot early because I am doing an event tonight, and I need to be done and on my way. Arnott, LOL. I went double length today. Just finished. Be right back. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Um, well, we're just about to get into the trades here. Ariana Grande's, this is Variety, of course. Ariana Grande's Wicked SNL monologue. Yeah, that looks about right for modern day SNL, doesn't it? Look, everybody, a gay person. Um, Hilarious. No, it's not hilarious, right? Because liberals would look at that and say, "Oh, that's his choice. That's not supposed to be funny. You're not supposed to laugh at him. You're supposed to treat him as a beautiful woman, or not, or I just don't know why anybody would watch SNL at this point. It's like what SNL used to be was craziness and fun stuff for the masses, and now it seems to be like a skit show for the extremely rich. You know, it's for the extremely rich to do their little skits, and I wouldn't be surprised if you find sketches either now or in the future on SNL making fun of sort of the common people. I think you probably could find examples of that because, you know, at this point, I got to think the bubble is so tight. In order to get in it, you already have to be in it. You already have to be way up here in society in order to get into the creative process at SNL, which is very highly regulated and competitive. They don't want any real comedians in it. They just want people who will do the things that, you know, are with color within the lines, as they say. Alien Romulus sets date for digital and physical release. So if you need a physical copy of a movie they already made in 1979, there you go. Zoe Zaldana, Steven Spielberg restored my faith in Hollywood. How? By burning down a Woke Side Story or West Side Story? I guess, Zoe. Dune 2 director Denis Villeneuve says epic sandworm riding scene took sometimes a week for one shot and required a separate unit. Okay, movie's already out, dude. What are you doing? Saturday Night star Lamorne Morris wants to host SNL with original cast member Garrett Morris. I got the Emmy. I'm playing an icon. Why not? Sure. I would love to see that. I'd like to see Garrett Morris back on Saturday Night Live. He was one of the original guys. People forget him, but so I guess they'll be talking about a lot of the old cast now that Saturday Night Live is kind of coming out or is out. So here it is. But again, it's like 50 years ago, dude. It's too late. I would have made this movie 20 years after, like sometime in the 90s. Would have been amazing. People would have, oh man, people would have tuned in. People would have been flocking to the movie theaters if we had made this in the 90s. 20 years? The first Saturday Night Live? Sure. Now, I don't know, man. People, when you're not old enough to have been alive when the show started, I don't know why you would go see it. John Lithgow, Jeffrey Rush, and Christine Forsythe can win acting awards at Spain's 57th Sitges Film Festival. Good for John Lithgow. Look at him. And Jeffrey Rush. I don't know who the other person is. Here's Tim Burton at Francis Lumiere Festival, making an unexpected appearance. So, interesting that Variety is covering film festivals. Oasis reunites on SNL and promises not to break up before their tour. It's hard not to. It's a maybe. Is that the real Oasis, or I guess that's the cast members playing Oasis? Look at this. 3 articles about SNL. SNL roasts Kamala's Glock and Joker being a gay guy obsessed with Lady Gaga in Family Feud cold open. You know what old Saturday Night Live didn't need? A breakdown of what the sketches were. Just didn't need it. People watched the show. You wouldn't need to read the article because you'd either already seen it or you would want to. So, like, is this... I mean, this is supposed to be Variety. It's supposed to cover things like film festivals, which it's covering, I'll give them, but it's covering like, oh, look, here's the big name at the film festival. Like, what about some interesting films? What about some interesting film festival films that we haven't heard of? Why not talk about them? You know, you could mention the celebrities to get people to read the article, I guess, but, you know. Like Tim Burton touts this new auteur who's in his image. Something like that. Over at Fandom Pulse, sci-fi author Devin Erickson calls out Games Workshop for the destruction of their Warhammer 40k setting. Yeah, it's really... Warhammer's been around a long time, and to destroy it now is like... Man, you guys went a long way to destroy this. I'm kind of shocked that Warhammer even sold out and allowed this to happen. Because they must have known what the backlash would be. Were they in such bad shape that they needed to sell out and was the only way to save themselves? Because that seems to be the pattern. As a Razorfist says, it's not get woke, go broke. It's go broke and get woke to save yourself, then croak. But I find it hard to believe, but it's possible. I mean, at one point, Warhammer had a store in the Cherry Hill Mall near me. And I was a big role player, but I had never played Warhammer. I didn't know anybody in the area who played it. We played role-playing games, but we didn't play the miniatures so much. And they had just opened a huge store. And they only sold Warhammer, because I went in there. At the time, I was pushing my games, and I was like, oh, you guys carry under any other games? And they're like, no. And I just thought, how the F can you afford to open a store in the Cherry Hill Mall that's just one game, one product, essentially? But they did. And they were there for a while. They're not there anymore. Here's another one. Battletech writer Brian Young encourages Disney Star Wars to push transgender agenda on young children. Ew. What's wrong with you, dude? What's wrong with you? This is the dumbest thing. I mean, just when I thought Star Wars, okay, they've bottomed out on stupidity. Nope, they did it again. This is hands down the dumbest thing in history of Star Wars. So far, I have to put in a caveat, so far. Because as we all know, the stormtroopers are clones living in a universe where you can clone people, where you can replace their body parts. Their body parts. So, obviously the technology would make being trans superfluous, even if that was an issue for the stormtroopers, right? You could just be like, oh, you want to be a lady? All right, just go into that booth over there. You'll be a lady. Just push the lady button, and it'll swap you right out there. You'll be good to go. Because we have the future technology. We can clone body parts. And for the body parts we can't clone, we could just put a cybernetic vagina in you. You're good to go. Right? I mean, that would be the logical conclusion if you watch Star Wars for 10 seconds. But beyond that, they're clones. They're genetically identical. So, doesn't make any sense. Ardent, of course, is throwing up. Arrgh, ah. I mean, look at the colors. And you're going to put the trans flags colors on the stormtrooper uniform. Another thing a stormtrooper would never do. They're clones. They're cannon fodder. They're not even meant to be real characters per se. They're just sort of meant to be mindless drones that the heroes shoot. So, like, there's so many things. Like, on many levels, this makes zero sense. You know, the Empire, they're the bad guys. They're the bad guys, by the way. So, and as you can see, this person is in some kind of trooper uniform. Aren't it? The hair is the topper. Yeah, and look at this hair. Screaming like, oh, she's indigenous. Or she's a person of color. Why have that hair as a stormtrooper? It doesn't make any sense. What does the hair stick out as this person runs across the battlefield? Does it like stick out of the helmet? Like the helmet's probably supposed to be airtight to a certain degree to protect the trooper from various things, but like none of this enters in to the logic of doing this, because there is no logic. There's only the ideology, apparently, at Disney. Only the ideology. The ideology trumps everything. Logic, reason, thought, story. As long as you get a trans person of color in this, then everything's good, according to them, apparently. I don't know who wants this. No one's been asking for it. Ardent, that's not within regs. Yeah. Logic. Wah. Yeah, there's no logic to it. It's just insane. Insane people run Star Wars. And they should all be fired, of course. Oh, yeah. Oh, wouldn't you just love to bring these people into the office and be the one? So you were the one who gave us the transgender stormtrooper. Yes, I did. Because they'd be proud. Oh, Kite is here. Clones can be very different, but only with different nurture, not nature. They're saying that trans gay is learned behavior by adding this. Yeah, which also flies in the face of some logic and reason. Ardent, on a positive note, been watching Hell on Wheels. Damn, that's good. I heard that's good. So let's get off of this image. Sad news, mildly sad news. A Razor Fist cast doubt on the continuation for his hit Ghost of the Badlands graphic novel with artist George. He's got a long Greek name. It's like Papadopoulos, but I think it's a little different. Yeah, so that's sad. But basically, George said it's a lot of work, and it is. And I talked about it on a previous stream. Ardent, it's on Tubi for free. Ooh, good to know. I might have to check that out. Yeah, I don't blame George. I mean, it's, it's probably a year of his life doing a book like that. But will that give him a year's worth of money? I kind of doubt it. Even though it was a decent hit for him. Kite, also, sorry I didn't get in. Contact Tony. I've been hella busy. Oh, don't worry about it. I've been hella busy as well. I'm behind on everything. Also this week, comedian Patton Oswalt stands for Rings of Power with bizarre tweet praising the humanization of orcs, which is very funny. Unintentionally so, from Patton. So here's what he says. Now keep in mind, Patton supposedly has geek cred, and this is what he tweets. What makes season 2 of the Rings of Power deeper than season 1, already I'm taking away his geek card, is seeing the orcs mourn their dead, struggle to find a home in a world, and worry about their families. Makes the battle sequence more exciting and heartbreaking. They're not just a faceless horde. That's exactly what they are, Patton. Ardent, it was Razor's Western Top 10 vid that reminded me of Hell on Wheels. Oh, Neat. Yeah, that's exactly what the orcs are, Patton. They're twisted elves, is the pitch. They're elves that have been twisted into a nightmarish look. Uh, that's what they're supposed to be. You know who introduced the idea that orcs have children? Dungeons and Dragons, technically. If you read Keep on the Borderlands, they wrote in sequences, you like raid, I think it's kobolds. I don't think you get the orcs till later, but the kobolds had a tribe inside the caves there. And eventually you get to a room where all the women and children are. And they fight too. Ardent, Patton Oswalt is officially excommunicado. Yeah. Yeah, I can't believe a guy who actually knows the lore would even begin to say something like this. He knows better. He knows what the lore is, allegedly. And if he doesn't, he's a fake geek. That's sort of basic Lord of the Rings lore 101, that the orcs are really twisted elves. They don't have kids in the original incarnation. But I blame some of that on Dungeons and Dragons, because in other modules, the orcs would have kids and wives and stuff. Kite, the only people who are trying to humanize orcs are the people who love the idea of Rule 34. Yeah, there's some bizarre woke D&D thing going around that they're equating orcs to people of color, which is insane. That is absolutely not what they are. They are meant to be monsters. They're no different than, say, a dragon or a skeleton or anything like that. They're not meant to be creatures that we feel sorry for. They're meant to be unnatural, that they don't belong in the world at all. And the only recourse is to slay them and rid the world of their, evil. That's the whole point. But again, Dungeons and Dragons really opened this door, with half orcs and things like that. Never should have opened that door. So part of it's on Gary Gygax, but I think it was unintentional. Ardent, I love how the crowd pushing diversity refuses to allow one universe's orc to be different from another orc's. Yeah. But even back in the day, the argument used to be, oh, I'm a paladin, I have to slay all these orcs. Well, what about the women and children? Does that make any sense? Well, they're evil, would be the response. So, yes. They're born evil, and therefore, but again, they're not supposed to spawn. There's not even supposed to be females, I don't think. So, and it's fantasy, right? And fantasy, you're not supposed to think too hard about it. You're not supposed to dig down into the lore to the point at which you're trying to figure out the mechanics of orc sex and how they reproduce. That's just not what it's for. What you're supposed to do is say, well, there's another evil wizard and he's attacked a poor tribe of elves, and he's turned them all into orcs. That's what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be that. And that's one of the weaknesses of the orcs. They're very limited numbers. They're supposed to be powerful, but they're very limited in their numbers. They're a horde, but there's only so many of them. Kite, okay, I love the D&D thing, because if orcs, by their logic, are just people of color, why did it come at the same time as removing half races? Talk about inadvertent racism. LOL, another pandering fail. Yeah. Yeah, and in case you don't know, D&D went woke. And there's also a resistance movement to that as well. And they're all being called bigots. And, I think they're up to 5th edition. Just wouldn't even, but I would stop at 3. I didn't hear much about 4. But I've played 1, 2, and 3. three's perfectly functional. I think three's peak D&D at this point. You know, the other ones are supposed to expand it further with races and stuff. You know, you could just make up those rules. I used to do it all the time. I had DMs who would accommodate me if I wanted to play, for instance, a Minotaur. That we would come up with rules for the Minotaur, things I could and couldn't do, and you know, there were always expansion rules and stuff like that. But it depends on your DM. I mean, you make a custom game for you. The idea that now they're going to police language and, you know, they're going to police your fantasy. Yes, we don't want you fantasizing about a world in which people aren't treated equally. Kite, how dare you play this game of imagination by imagining it different from us, you bigot? Yeah, exactly. Ardent, 3 had peaked ninja. Yeah, it had a lot of great things. It was a good system, 3. I think, yeah. Nice thing about 3, too, was it was an open game system, so you could integrate, like, my friends and I, we had what was called imagination. And we would make crazy dungeons. My friend used to make some of the craziest. He made the Planet of the Apes dungeon, which was friggin' badass. Because you could get guns, the machine guns. And that's the first thing it was really tough to get them, too. Because you had to fight. In D&D, they had the apes. And apes were a 4-hit dice creature. And they were tough, man. They were tough to kill, even just fighting them. But when you hand them guns, it was even tougher. So we had to like really plot out killing one of the apes just to get the first bit of guns. So when we went after another ape, we had the guns ready to go, and it was a lot of fun. We had a great time getting machine guns, and he just let us have machine guns, which was amazing. So somewhere I still have a character who has a bunch of machine guns left, and you know, and we would go into the dungeon, man, and it was crazy. But I had a friend, you know, he made a Beatles dungeon, so there were all sorts of magic items related to the Beatles. Ardent, one DM I had blended Heroes Unlimited with 3.5. That sounds fun. What else do we do? I did a couple of time travel ones. I also did ones. Of course, my big dungeon was a movie related. So you would go into an encounter in a dungeon, and part of the fun was guessing the movie, and then you'd have to fight, you know, I'm trying to think. The most obvious example I have is the Terminator. I had the Terminator in it, and he was of course nearly impossible to kill. JC is here. Hey Tony, Canadian Thanksgiving up here doing family stuff. I understand. Enjoy your maple syrup and turkey. So I had the Terminator in it, and then one of the tropes, of course, is the characters spent like all their resources killing the damn thing, and it dies. And I said the lights finally go out. But then, of course, in the movie, everything in the movies happened in the dungeon. So then, of course, during the fight, after they kill it the first time, it immediately gains back a bunch of hit points, and the lights come back on. And you have to fight it again. So. JC, you get a chance to look at the PDFs I sent? I absolutely did not. Sorry. I'm not even sure if I got them. Did you email them or did you send them to... where did you send them? You know what? Did I get them? I think I got them. I think I did get them. It was... again, I'm having a tough month with all the events I'm doing. Ardent, a Universal Monster movie dungeon sounds fun. Yeah, I had some of the old movies too. Yes, email the fix. Oh, right. Yes, that one. Yes, I did get it, I think. Yeah, I think I did get it now that I'm thinking about it. I'm sorry. I'm dealing with a lot of things with my events and stuff. It's been crazy. I probably won't be able to look at it. Realistically, until November. Sorry, it's just it's just too crazy, dude. But if you need a quote or something sooner, let me know. Um, yeah, I think I had the Universal Monster movies. I definitely had the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I was planning on an entire eventually I was doing themes with levels, um, and then one whole level was going to be black and white films. JC, yeah, you sound busy this month. Curious what you think of the PKD story. LOL. I'm looking forward to it. Um, so yeah, so that's the kind of stuff. And then the rewards would be movie related magic items, or things like guns. It's okay to give characters guns, by the way, modern guns, because the characters eventually run out of bullets and they have no way to get more bullets, and that's perfectly logical. And unless they have a lot of magic, like super high level characters, there are magic spells that would allow you to duplicate the bullets you already have. But JC, any G2G back Evil comics on Kickstarter? Oh yeah, JC's Evil Comics is on Kickstarter this, I assume it's a month. So check that out. Back it if you can. Yeah, D&D's gone woke, big time. But that's never what it was meant to be. It wasn't meant to police your fantasies. I had DMs who would do all sorts of crazy things. I had DMs who would get your character hooked up. You would save hot chicks, and that was part of the adventure. And then yeah, he wouldn't describe it in graphic terms. But he'd be like, okay, yeah, you hook up with these hot chicks you saved from the orcs or whatever. And they had characters. We had characters who got married and had kids and stuff like that. So this sort of like, oh, we're gonna have the big thing on Twitter, if you haven't checked it out, is this bizarre note that the woke D&D players want disabled people in the dungeons. So they have what's called a battle wheelchair. So the idea being that, oh, this person can't walk, but he can still go on dungeons, damn it. And so he has a wheelchair, which of course makes zero sense, right? So let me count the ways of that. I mean, number one, of course, dungeons are not handicap accessible. This is medieval times. Yes, they probably could have put together a wheelchair. They had the technology. Certainly there would have been somebody who was paralyzed from all the battles and whatnot. Ardent, LOL, most fun campaign had player created punny magical items. Mine was a pool stick, a rod that generated water. Nice. So, it's medieval times. They have stairs. They don't have ramps. So the idea that you're going to have a wizard in a wheelchair, yeah, you might have one character like that for some reason. But if you've played D&D for more than 10 minutes, you know that there are many, 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 many ways around the problem of a character who's paralyzed. Number one is magic. There's clerical magic that would just cure the paralyzation, right? So if you broke your back during battle, there's definitely a cleric out there who can cast Cure Critical Wounds, so you're no longer paralyzed. You're perfectly fine. You go on your way. The second version would be you'd have a magic item that would just allow you to walk. It might be a magic ring, right? You put the magic ring on, oh, it just allows you to walk. Like the magical forces move your legs however you want, and as long as you have the ring on, you can walk all you want. Problem solved. A necklace, you could do it to a necklace. A magic potion that either cures you or gives you the ability to walk. There are magic items that allow you to fly, so you wouldn't need to use your legs at all. There are magic items that do just about anything. So it's ridiculous to even have a battle wheelchair because it's so impractical in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, you might be playing a no magic or low magic campaign. Okay. But unless there's like no magic in it and no clerical magic, you know, I could see a character going on a quest, maybe, to find a particular item that would cure him from, say, a curse from a some sort of demigod who curses them so he can't walk anymore, and then he goes on a long epic quest with his friends. But again, it would be extremely unusual. The idea, like, well, we're going to have, you know, our disabled druid accompany, it doesn't make any sense. There's no such thing. So, stop it. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever in your campaign. You know, unless you want to make, I don't know, disabled world. I guess you could make that. Everybody's disabled in disabled world. There's people in wheelchairs, people who are blind. Sure. Yeah, you could do that, I guess. Then you could fight disabled monsters. Oh, we slayed the deaf dragon. Or whatever. But it's your fantasy. I mean, if you want to do that, you could write that. If you want to have a fantasy in which orcs rule the earth and have children and jobs and I don't know, barbecues in the summer, you're allowed to do that. I mean, I'm not saying you aren't allowed to do it. I'm just saying that's stupid fantasy. It's bizarre fantasy. It's not my fantasy. My fantasy is to slay the orcs because they're evil. To slay a bunch of evil monsters and save the day. That's my fantasy. To do things that I can't do in the real life. It's the whole point of fantasy. Ardent, does a wheelchair-bound druid wild shape into a broken bunny? Yeah, I don't know. It's another thing, too. You could shape change. Druids, typically, when they shape change, heal part of their deal, so that doesn't make any sense either. None of it makes any sense. Because, again, it's ideology. It's not logic or reason. It's just people saying, no, you have to do this. You have to do this or you're a bigot. You're a bigot. I mean, literally, if I was playing in a D&D group and, oh, this is our, you know, druid, she's in a wheelchair, I'd be like, oh, let's take her to the cleric. Like, that would be my first move. Then I would watch the DM go, well, you can't. And I'd be like, why? I'm a paladin. I know the cleric. Trust me, this will work out. Oh, no, the lawful good cleric won't heal the druid. That doesn't sound like my cleric, and my cleric's lawful good. They'll heal everybody. They obviously, we want allies. So we're going to the cleric. Just let me do the talking. And then I'd watch the DM squirm and try to explain why we can't heal them. Ardent. Yep, totally paused, ideologically possessed. And then eventually I think I would either be thrown out of the group or the DM would reluctantly admit, well, yeah, we do have the spells to heal you completely. Here you go. See, you can walk. It's great. Now you don't need the wheelchair. Come on. And the rest of the group would yell at me and it would break up. But my friends in my group were very politically incorrect. We used to do all sorts of very politically incorrect things when we were playing D&D. Like, all the time. Especially if we were evil. Oh, God. Being evil in Dungeons & Dragons was like a license to just cause absolute mayhem 24/7. And it was fun for a while. Eventually you get bored with it because it's no challenge. You just kill everybody. Literally, we'd go into a town. Oh, can you help us slay the dragon that's assaulting us? And we'd be like, yeah, first give us all your money. And your houses, and your women, and your food. Okay, now that we own everything, we don't care about your stupid dragon. Ardent. What's worse is telling a disabled person they can't even fantasize about being whole. Yeah, like what sort of... If I was disabled, my first thing would be like, oh, I want to play a guy who can walk. I don't want to play a guy who's in a wheelchair. I do that every day. Wow. I just read the headline here. A few ways to prevent Los Angeles from becoming a production ghost town. Guest column. Well, la-di-da. Gee, I'm wondering why you're worried about becoming a production ghost town. Could it possibly be the amount of regulations from, say, the state and the city and the unions? Could it possibly be that? Oh, because why do people shoot in, say, Romania? Oh, right, there's no unions, there's very few regulations, there's very few taxes. They're just happy to have you there spending some money. And that's the way it is in parts of the United States, too. Ardent, LOL, filter ate my murder hobo comment. Yeah, the filter on this thing, I just don't get. So yeah, if you would like Los Angeles not to be a ghost town, the first step would be to remove your government. Put in there people who actually care about liberty and care about, for instance, lowering taxes and permits and all that nonsense. But you're never going to have that as long as you have Democrats. Democrats have a stranglehold on California, and they strangle it more and more every day. They're not looking for new ways to give you a cut. They're looking for new ways to get at the money you still have, Hollywood. So until you stop supporting them, you're screwed. You're utterly screwed. Ardent, get some actual capitalist. Yeah. Yeah, you could fix California overnight. You would come in there, you would slash the programs, so you could slash the taxes to next to nothing. You would fire a bunch of government workers. You would kill a bunch of programs. You would, of course, need to eliminate sanctuary cities and the influx of immigrants. Within a year or two, things would turn around. Because California has so many resources and such nice weather, productions would come flocking back. It's way cheaper to shoot in Los Angeles, except for how much it costs to live there, how much it costs to do business there. You would need a completely different mindset from the people who run things. The people who run things are just running it into the ground, and there's no sign of stopping, like none. Look at San Francisco. San Francisco is driving out what little business they had left. They're still driving it out. What few stores are left in San Francisco look like something out of a dystopian nightmare. All the merchandise is locked up and you can't get at it unless an employee comes out and unlocks the key, which is why a bunch of businesses just don't even do business, and it's not worth it. The only way I think they could kind of fix it in California, and this would be my advice to the Democrats, besides like quitting and never bothering us with your stupid laws ever again. And the Democrats probably would be against this, but if you're insisting on trying to do business in California, and let's say you have a Target, what you would do is you'd make the Target the Target club, and you have to have a club membership to shop there to even get in, like Costco. And then if you have the club card, you get in, and if you don't, you're not allowed in. So homeless people wouldn't be able to afford to do it, so you could eliminate like 90% of the problem. And if anybody tried to steal anything, you would know instantly who it was, and you could cancel their membership permanently, and they could never come back into the store. So it would solve like 80% of your problem. Ardent, California needs a Batman Inc. It just needs to get rid of all the Democrats that are currently in power. But they would rather rule over the rubble than do anything else. So California will go critical at some point. I mean, it's pretty close to being there. Um, and the production will just leave. It's already leaving. No real productions are in LA except the big ones. And even those guys, they don't shoot in LA unless they have to. And a lot of times when they shoot at something in LA, it's actually shot somewhere else. It's just made to look like LA. It's just too expensive to shoot in LA. In LA, buildings have its own agent. I'm not kidding. You will walk into a famous landmark in Los Angeles, and you will see a sign that says, if you want to shoot or include this building in your film, contact so and so management. And you would have to contact them to get permission to shoot in and around the store. And I'm sure it would cost you money. It's not going to be free. It's not like here in South Jersey, like today, if I went out and shot a movie on my phone, which I could do, and I shot some scenes in my neighborhood on the street in front of stores, unless I block traffic needlessly for hours, probably nobody would say anything. A few passerbys might be like, oh, what are you guys doing? Oh, shooting a movie. Cool. And that's the way it is in like 90% of the country. You could just shoot whatever, probably without a permit. The bigger the city, more likely. I mean, technically, if you're going to shoot for hours and hours, you really need a permit. I mean, if you bother anybody, the town might say, well, you need a permit to do this, and you're going to need permission next time or whatever. But if you go to some small town in the middle of nowhere like I am, you're probably not even going to need that. And you'll probably get it completely shot for free. You know, that part of it will be free. In Los Angeles, you can't do that. Like, you could go guerrilla style. You could shoot in alleyways and rooftops and people's apartments and whatnot and maybe get away with it. But if you have to shoot at, like, the La Brea tar pits, which are in Los Angeles, you're going to need a lot of permits. Like, a lot. You're going to need a permit. First, you're going to need permission from the La Brea tar pits. Then you're going to need permission probably from Los Angeles and get some sort of permit there. And then you might need a permit from the state of California. I'm not sure. In Philadelphia, there's some of that, but not to the extent of Los Angeles. Philadelphia is not used to having a ton of production, but if you're going to have a truck and you need to block a street, or, you know, even if you're just shooting temporarily on a street, you're going to need a permit. And you're going to have to pay the city of Philadelphia something. But it's becoming a ghost town because it's just too expensive. When you can save millions of dollars simply by going somewhere else, going to a city that just doesn't have all these regulations, that are just willing to blanket say, none of them apply to you, do whatever you want. No wonder nobody wants to shoot in LA. In the past, the reason to shoot in LA was you had access to all the sets that are already built, the permanent sets. Like Universal has a New York City street, and there's a few other locations, a suburban setting. You know, they're just, you know, go to Universal Studios, you can see them all, and they use them. There's all sorts of permanent sets. They're just ready to go, and you just have to go to Universal Studios and say, oh, we're going to shoot on this day, and we need it for 2 weeks and whatever, and you shoot your scenes. There are places like that in every studio. A lot of them are sound stages now, but Universal has the lot, what's called the lot. And that's why it was cheap to shoot there. That's why the original Star Trek shot on the Universal lot. That's why they did the Bad Guys from Germany episode, and they did the Western episode, and they did the Gangster episode, because they already had these sets, and it was cheaper to do that. Kite, Cali is more likely to get many jokers. Yeah, it already has tons of jokers. They're already busting into people's houses. We've heard about tons of celebrities who have gotten broken into. The most expensive house in LA, $195 million. I forget who owns it. Oh, I think one of the Hiltons. Has been for sale for a while. Nobody wants it. Why would you want to live in LA and pay $195 million to do so? You could move to, say, Texas for $195 million first off, you could buy, I don't know, like a small county in Texas. You'd have probably twice as much land and half the problems, depending on where it was. Now, if you're close to the border, you might have some problems, but, you know, in any other state, just about, except maybe New York, 195 million will, well, even in New York, 195 million will get you something really nice. 195 million in Los Angeles, and you got to live in Los Angeles. Yeah, no thanks. You know, you could be as insulated as you want, but you do need to send people out to get you food. And if your staff gets killed, you got to hire new staff. So it's no right. Who wants to live in Los Angeles, much less shoot there? Let's see. More SNL news, of course. Harrison Ford says he's still working as an actor for the Essential Human Contact, whatever that is. He should just retire at this point. You kind of effed up your legacy, Harrison, in my view. Should have never done. I mean, if you had stopped before Indy 5, you might have had a chance. You know, Blade Runner sequel was pretty forgettable. Kind of faded into the darkness. Wasn't even, I mean, compared to Indy, wasn't even that bad, and kind of wasn't even your fault. But there's no getting around Indy 5. Like, Indy 5, they couldn't do it without you. And I'm very disappointed that Harrison didn't just stand up to the execs and say, I'm not saying this. He does have that power. I mean, they couldn't make the movie without him. But I guess he wanted that kind of send-off. So, and the fans hated it. Seems to me. Ardent, LOL, I guess Callista Flockhart isn't much of a human contact. To be fair, she probably turned sideways and fell down a shower drain years ago. Dana Carvey reveals smashing ice cream in Maya Rudolph's face on SNL was unplanned. Oh, wow, Dana Carvey. Jeez, crazy. Don't care. So, John Lascelles, Dark Shadows and Twilight Zone actor, dies at 95. That's a pretty good run. All right, moving on to bounding into comics. Amazon MGM Studios taps Henry Cavill to leave live action Voltron. I don't know about this. Seems like a dumb idea. I mean, we are really scraping the bottom of the barrel. How much longer before we get the GoBots movie? I mean, Voltron's okay, but, you know, it's like every studio exec is just sitting around, what did I watch when I was a kid? Oh, yeah, I used to watch Voltron. That was good. Let's do that. It's like, okay, maybe something else. Maybe anything else. Maybe something original. Oh, my God. George R.R. Martin's co-author reveals shocking truths about House of the Dragon, HBO drama, and The Winds of Winter. If he dies, fans are out of luck. Look, I hope I get the riches that George R.R. Martin gets these days. I would love that. But I don't hope for George's work ethic after that fact. I mean, I imagine, you know, if I was suddenly flush with millions of dollars, it would be a distraction for a bit. But at some point, I'd be like, I really got to get my nose to the grindstone and finish up the Pineys. But Jesus, George, you know, what are you waiting for? I don't know. The only thing I could say is he has either lost it, he is so out of his groove, he can't get back into it, and he just sort of is despairing and can't write anymore. Because, and this is true, if you get out of your groove and you can't get back into it, you kind of can't write. Like, There's a process that every writer has. Maybe he can't get back into it. Part of it's the money. Part of it he's changed his lifestyle. I don't know. And look at him. How long is he going to live? I mean, he's a heavyset guy. He's old. I don't think he's going to live to be 95. No offense. So, it'd be a shame if he never finished it, but it's getting to the point where fans don't care, and that's the worst. You know, the longer he waits, the more harsh they're going to be when he finally puts the damn thing out. Next flicks, Tomb Raider, The Legend of Lara Croft star Haley Atwell says animated series will feature a more complicated version of the title heroine. Again, I never liked Tomb Raider. I never thought it was good. I get it. It's Indiana Jones with boobs. But again, a shadow of a shadow of a shadow of a shadow. Current Lara Croft is a shadow of the former Lara Croft, which is a shadow of Indy, which is a shadow of other pulp heroes from the 1950s, which is a shadow from the book pulp heroes of the 1940s. So how many times are we going to keep repeating this? It's just an IP. And I think it's one that should just be completely retired. Marvel Comics, the Ultimates writer, confirms the new Ultimate Hawkeye uses they-them pronouns in honor of queer and two-spirit organizers who protested the Dakota Access Pipeline. Once again, Marvel completely out of the zeitgeist. Again, you have to fire everybody at Marvel Comics. You know, it's not only that they have a bunch of woke tards working for them, in my view. The executives think this is the way to go. This is the way we have to reach the kids. Kids don't care about any of this. They don't read comics as a rule. Again, come to a show once in a while, see who's reading comics. You're not going to see too many children, and you're definitely not going to see any read the Ultimates. So, Kite, complicated, LOL. It's an S show. In the Netflix show, she's always crying. Everyone has been made gay, including Lara. Full-on daddy issues. Yeah, it's like, for all the mentally ill people in the mix in the various stories I read, a lot of them have been put in charge of various media organizations. And, you know, it's fine to pick people who think differently. That's a good thing. You want people who think differently. It's not fine to pick somebody just because, hey, they have ADHD. Like, that's not a reason to pick anybody. And they keep picking people based on a different parameter that is, you know, if you have a person who's written many stories and they get a good reception, that's the kind of person you want to hire to write stories. And then you want to give them a leeway to write something. And maybe it'll be a little different, whatever. But when you set out to hire people who are just kind of messed up, and then you interpret that as, well, he's not messed up, so he just thinks differently from you and I. No. If that person can't get his life together to at least write stories, then you're championing somebody based on mental illness, essentially. Kite. There's picking someone who thinks differently, but they all think the same. Yeah, and there's that problem too. But again, it all comes back to the woke. And they've definitely taken over comics. Nobody cares about comics anymore. They've destroyed the industry. You know, most of it is a pipeline to kids' libraries in order to get this stuff into the libraries under the guise of, oh, look, kids, comics. You can read comics. Isn't that good? Now, if you had said that when I was a kid, we would have been like, yeah, because we lived in the 70s when comics were good. But no teacher when I was a kid would have ever given me a comic book. They would have been like, oh, no, that's junk. Now we have the total opposite. We have a bunch of woke teachers who have a bunch of woke comics, giving them to students who don't care about comics. Oh, they're kids. They read comics. No, they don't. Come to a show. See how many kids are there. You won't find many. And the ones you find will either be so young they can barely read that you won't find any teenagers. A handful of teenagers, maybe. Maybe one or two. They're collectors. They're buying and selling. They think they're going to make $1 million. They're the next generation of comic nerds. They know the score. They take one look at Ultimates and go, oh yeah, I don't read that. They don't read. Those guys don't even read comics. They just buy them to sell them to somebody else. They take one look at Ultimates and go, yeah, nobody's buying that. They're buying old stuff because that's the good stuff. You know, back when Peter Parker was just a nice guy who was trying to get a date and he pined for a beautiful girl from high school. You know, kind of wholesome stories that everybody could relate to. Today you got Spider-Man and his ex-wife is living with another dude, raising kids with him, and I think one of them belongs to him, and the three of them are kind of friends, and it's all good. What? Nobody wants that complicated BS in their comics, you morons. Nobody cares about that, except the people running Marvel Comics do. They love that stuff. It's not about superpowers or fighting bad guys or going on adventures. It's about relationships, sex, who's got mental illness, who's got a pronoun here. That's what it's about for them. Kite, they know kids aren't reading comics, but they need to do it to comics too because it keeps each individual geek group focused on the attacks on their medium. Gamers can't help comic nerds and vice versa. Divide and conquer is their strategy. At this point, they don't even need to do that, unfortunately, because so many geeks are woke-tards. They've signed on to this because people desperately want validation in their life, right? So if you can get a quick validation by saying, oh, I support the trans community and I support the LGBTQ community and I'm an ally, and they pat you on the head and you go, oh, you're a good ally, good for you. Can you say they, them pronouns? They, them pronouns. Oh, very good, very good. I may change my pronouns tomorrow. Oh, well, make sure you send me a text so I get the pronoun right. Like, that's what they want. It's not about even conquering the medium. It's about subservience to their ideology. So at any time, they can pull the rug out from under you and say, you're a bad person, you're a bigot, get out. No, I'm not. I'm on your side. Let me prove it to you. Let me prostrate myself in front of you and say your pronouns and whatever else you want me to say, I'll say. Trans women are real women. That's what they'll, push. So it's not even about the medium. They don't care about the medium. They don't care about Dungeons and Dragons or comics or anything else. These people don't buy this stuff. They barely pay attention. They're only in it so they can police it. That's it. These people don't sit around and play Dungeons and Dragons for hours like me and my friends used to. They play it once in a while, especially at cons, because that's the biggest area where they could police people. It's about policing people. Maybe at conventions for comics, but comics are so unimportant, they don't even show up to conventions anymore. Not to the ones I go to anyway. Maybe some of the big ones. There's still a few. There's still some geek controversy at some of the bigger shows. But most of the bigger shows are woke as hell, so they don't even bother. You're not going to go. There's no money in going to these shows. I don't go to the Javits Center anymore. There's no money in it for me. It's too expensive to do. I can't talk to enough people. I can't sell enough stuff there. It's just not worth it. So I'm out. I'm going to markets, local markets, and doing my thing there. And, you could wokeify whatever you want. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I went to, and I talked about this in one of my videos on Bitchute, Odysee, and Rumble. I went to a very woke town for a market festival, and you had people in masks, you had people in pink and blue hair, you had a guy who pretended to be trans, but I don't think he was really trans. And you had all these woke people, and they all looked miserable, by the way, absolutely miserable. And they're all about themselves. You know, fortunately, they don't spend much time with me because the moment I start promoting my book, they try to make it about them, and then I immediately go back to the book, and they realize, oh, he just wants to sell his book. He doesn't want to talk to me and hear all my crazy ideas. Excuse me. Getting phlegmy, and I ran out of iced tea, damn it. Anyhow, it's 2 o'clock. I'm going to start wrapping up. Let's move on. Got more on the Joker 2 movie, more on The Apprentice. Chris Brown's South Africa concert backlash by women's rights campaigners with petition to ban him. Not surprised he got convicted for some bad behavior, I'll say. Taylor Swift London police escort urged by UK government intervention after Star's mother threatened to cancel. Well, she has been threatened and her fans have been threatened. So yeah, I would think you'd want to give her more protection. Makes sense. Okay. Don't know. More SNL. Look at this. This is deadline 1, 2, 3. I think there was at least another 4, maybe 4 articles on SNL. Just like they can't. Oh no, 5, 6 maybe. No, this is the same one from the top. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 articles on SNL. Reading these articles would be the length of the show. It's like, who are these articles for? If you watched the show, you already saw the sketch. If you didn't watch the show, you probably don't have an interest in SNL. So, is this just to keep the trade people, people in the industry? Oh, SNL. Yeah, I didn't watch it, but I read about it. So they could be in the imaginary zeitgeist they create. Bleeding Fool. You got a review of Am I Racist? That's a little late. Better late than never, I suppose. Max cancels Mindy Kaling's atrocious Scooby-Doo adjacent Velma series. See, the news isn't all bad. It's about time. I love this headline. No one's laughing now. Joker filet-a-do is a disaster. That's a good headline. All right. And then the wrap. More on the Joker 2 and how it dropped 82%, if you missed the beginning of that. More on SNL. 1, 2 SNL headlines. J.D. Vance says he's still sad his relationship with his trans friend Sophia ended over gender-affirming care. Yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, unfortunately, I think, again, you want to talk about a divide and conquer strategy. That's sort of it there. It's like, you got to get on board with this or else I can't be your friend kind of thing. There is no such thing as gender-affirming care. Okay? There's a very, very tiny slice of people who are gender dysphoric, and they're not going to be happy any other way unless they maybe get an operation or take some drugs to make them more feminine or male, depending. But that's a very, very tiny slice of the population. The problem is you have a bunch of people who think they desperately want to be part of the trans community, and they're not trans. So they default to helping someone who maybe is having some issues, whether it's actually about their sexuality or they have other mental issues, and they desperately want to keep not pushing them, but they keep reaffirming that they're trans. And it's sort of like, what do they call it? Munchausen by proxy. There are a lot of parents doing that, and it's very sad. Indie Phantom. They them thinks SNL is still relevant. Yeah, yeah. You can have a current SNL. I have nothing, no interest in it. Here we go. Joker 2 review. Todd Phillips laughs at the fans. Yeah, sad. Never turn on the fans. And look, there are times in which people who have very high profiles, they make movies or they're in TV shows or whatever, it seems like the fans turn on them, but those people really aren't the fans. Like you have your fans, and then you have people who just follow the zeitgeist, whatever it is. So, for instance, with my case in the Pineys, as I accumulate more fans, I also accumulate people. They are following the zeitgeist and they see other people enjoying it and they go, I want to be part of that too. Now, are they my fans? They're my fans for a while. As long as they feel the zeitgeist is heading in my direction, they're fans. When they feel it's going in a different direction, they leave and go to something else. They just follow whatever they think is popular and which will get them laid or make them friends or make them feel good about themselves. So what you try to do is you try to make your project or whatever it is welcoming as possible so people come to see it without compromising its integrity. And the downside is if the zeitgeist turns against you, those temporary fans can turn on you. But you don't want to confront them because then that makes your regular fans very uncomfortable. Your actual fans, you don't want to make uncomfortable. You just want to say, well, I hope you'll come back and maybe check out the next installment of this or that, and then keep the fans you have. There's plenty of people who have done that, and they do very well for themselves in the downside of their career because they still have thousands and thousands of fans. You just don't hear about them because they're not in the zeitgeist anymore. You look at something like the Insane Clown Posse. The Insane Clown Posse will always have fans. They had a peak at some point, and now they've come down, they've plateaued to where they're probably going to be for the rest of their careers, and it'll slowly go down, but they'll always have fans. Indie Phantom. Elliot Page self-owned. Yeah, it's a shame. Andrew Garfield teases Spider-Man return. I mean, he was great in No Way Home. I don't know. I don't know what they could do. They're going to go back to the well with him. I don't know. Maybe. Connie Nelson says Wonder Woman 3 being scrapped is crazy. No, that makes sense. If you're not going to keep Gal Gadot, scrap it. Start over. Erase Wonder Woman 2. Erase it. Essentially, that's what you're doing. Insane Clown Posse shout out. Yes. I mean, what is Terrifier 3 but the insane Fago-fueled version of Insane Clown Posse's, ethos, in a way. But yeah, Wonder Woman 3. What are you going to do? If you're not going to keep Gal Gadot, it's over. I would have kept her, but she maybe had another 2 movies left. Could have done 3, maybe fixed the character, then thrown her into another Justice League, and maybe spun off her sidekick to eventually be the new Wonder Woman. I don't know. Or you could just recast her. Recast her with a younger woman who will work for cheap and hopefully be in more stuff. You really have to cast the MCU or the DCU like they now cast Star Trek. And the one, I'll say, smart thing the executives did when they started with Next Generation, they looked at Star Trek and they said, oh, we have all these conventions and we have this fan base, and we're going to make sure that our actors are committed to doing some of that fan base related stuff. So when they signed the contracts for Next Generation, they included things like doing conventions, which actors didn't necessarily have to do, or they could hold out for money, or they could just say, I don't want to do them. This way, they're in the mix with the fans. These days, I don't know how much that, how much currency that holds if the movie sucks, but it's a good thing to do, I suppose. But you can commit them to, listen, you have to give us the option to hire you for, cameos in some of the other DCU movies and then, the Justice League and whatever. Indie Phantom. I would still bang Gal Gadot even after Snow White debacle. Yeah, you just don't have to watch Snow White. I wouldn't watch it. Wouldn't give him my money. All right. I'm going to wrap up here because I do have to get ready for the show. And I have to leave relatively early to get there because it's a long drive. So what have we learned today? Well, mostly we've learned that the box office is really dead this weekend. And Joker 2 is an utter failure, in my view. It's pretty bad. So, it's maybe not as bad as, say, Megalopolis, which sounds really, really unwatchable. But, Hollywood needs something new. They need to stop supporting political people, number one. If Hollywood pulled its money from the Democrats, they would probably run into a ton of more problems. But how much worse could it be? How much worse could it be in Hollywood right now if they finally said, listen, we can't afford to support you people anymore. You don't do anything for us. So we are not supporting you. Like, what's the worst that can happen? I suppose the Democratic Party could lower the boom and completely drive Hollywood out of Hollywood. But they're halfway there now, so you might as well just make plans to do that and move to Nevada. Ardent, this week I learned that if I go 2 hours on my stream, Tony will go early and try to thieve my views. Oh, I'm sorry. Just kidding. I learned that talking for 2 hours straight means I need more than 1 cup of coffee. Yeah, I ran out of iced tea too. Indie Phantom, we learned Joker 2 is a clown show. And that Terrifier 3 is the new King Evil Clown. No shade at the Terrifier, but that should not be the number one movie. There should be something else out. But, good for the Terrifier. I mean, those guys are going to get money thrown at them. Oh, yeah. Hollywood's going to be like, oh, my God, Joker 2 is a disaster. Hey, look at this Terrifier movie. Oh, let's poach those guys. They've probably already been poached already, but I would give the Terrifier guys $100 million and say, I need 5 movies. Kite. Speaking of Terrifier 3, Ice 9 Kills, work of art, is now out. Oh, cool. Ice 9 Kills. I remember that from Kurt Vonnegut's book. Kite, and my God, the music video is crazy. I'll have to check that out after this. As for me, I am super busy this week. Holy cow, am I busy. Indie Phantom, timing is everything for Terrifier. That is true. I'm doing I Heart Horror tonight from 6 to 9 in Mattawa, New Jersey. I'm doing the Women's Club in Barnegat at 1:30 on Monday. Tuesday I'm off, and then I have to prep for a 15 event tour, which I'll be going flat out until the 29th. Another Tuesday where I have a day off, and then wrapping up on Halloween. Also, I have to finish editing the Pineys book 16. I'm almost done, so I definitely want to finish by Tuesday. Fingers crossed. Maybe Vig is working on the cover. He might send it. If he sends it to me before or on Tuesday, that would be a godsend, and I could get it all out before I start my 15-day tour. and maybe even have it by Halloween would be great. But my 15-day tour, it just includes so many dates I can't even read them all. So check out my signings and appearances if you're interested in that. Kite, they have 2 albums, Tony, that I think you'll love: The Silver Scream and Welcome to Horrorwood. Ooh, they sound cool. All the songs are based on horror films or horror adjacent. That sounds very cool. Sounds very cool. All right, I'll check that out. Ardent, at Kite, the band is still called Ice Nine Kills? It does kill. Ice Nine, for those of you who don't know, was a substance created in one of Kurt Vonnegut's books. What the hell was it called? Oh, God. It's the one with the planet name in it. I forget what it's called. Kite, correct, Ardent. The idea is the physicist who invents it imagines a pile of cannonballs stacked up. And so that what Ice Nine does is essentially does that. It stacks up the atoms and it essentially freezes anything it touches. So if you touch Ice Nine from your finger, it just starts to freeze you and it just goes throughout your entire body and you're completely frozen. And so it's a weapon, and does it freeze the Earth or does it freeze another planet? I forget. It's been a long time since I read that story. Ardent, we'll have to look into them. Never heard of them. In return, I recommend checking out Adam Jensen for some bluey rock tunes. Ardent, Jupiter or something. Yeah, God, I can't remember the book. Kite, it is more metal heavy, but they have more melodic stuff too, depending on the movie. Guessing the movies make it fun. That does sound fun. It sounds like the dungeons I was talking about earlier. Oh yeah, and we talked about D&D today a lot for some reason. I kind of miss playing D&D, but I just don't have the time. I would rather be a player than a DM. DM is very time intensive. Back in the day when I had all sorts of free time, that's what I would do. I would create dungeons all day long for my friends. And I still have reams and reams of papers somewhere full of dungeons that have yet to be explored. Because, you know, you're always ahead. But, yeah, that was fun back in the day. And then I actually got paid to write some dungeons. So that was fun. Anyhow, I'm going to wrap it up here because I really need to get going. Ardent, I miss D&D in general. I used to just love just freestyling as the DM. Wiki. Kite, speaking of, Tony, is there an email I can get to you? Yes, there is. If you go to my YouTube channel, the channel page, there's a contact link. And then when you go to that, it has my email. So there's like a couple layers, but you can get to it. Ardent, later. And later to you, Kite. So, again, forgive me if I don't get back to you right away. Crazy month. Crazy month. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to wrap it here, and we'll see you in the next one. Oh, man. Should have turned off the stream.